Hi everyone, Mother Lisa here with Creating Sacred Space at Home, part 1 of a series called Spirituality at Home. So this is the first episode in a series of teaching videos on spirituality at home. In this series of videos, we'll look at various ways of fostering our spiritual lives during this time of isolation, when we are unable to meet together in person. Today's episode is about creating sacred space at home, because everyone needs a place to pray. Bishop Todd, in his April 4th address, invited us, if you can, to prepare a spot in your home in a way that helps you to focus on God. Now that's something which is good to do regardless of whether or not we are self-isolating during a pandemic. When we pray at home, we hallow the home as a place of prayer. And here's why we'd want to do that. Christianity teaches that we have a 24/7 kind of faith. That is, we are always living our faith from day to day, not just when we are in church on Sunday. There's an old hymn you might remember that says, 7 whole days, not 1 in 7, I will praise thee. That means we are loving God and our neighbor 24/7. It's a full-time job. Don't worry, the pay might be lousy, but the benefits are great. If we are loving God and our neighbor every day of the week, that means we are praying every day of the week, not just Sunday. If we are praying every day, but we are not in church every day, that means we will be regularly praying in some place that is not the church. It may be in your home or garden. It may be as you commute to work. It may be as you walk or sit outside. Okay, if you don't have a habit of daily prayer, don't worry. We can work on that. Just stay tuned. Now, the thing about home is that by definition, it's where we live. So lots of things go on there, all the necessary activities of the day. Certain spaces may be dedicated to certain purposes: laundry, kitchen, dining room, living room, bedroom, bathroom, storage, workshop, office, or study. The home is a multi-use or multi-purpose space. And of course, not everyone has enough space in the home to set aside a whole room for prayer. So even our prayer space itself may be a multi-use space. Now, whenever we have a specific task to do in a multi-use or multi-purpose space, preparations have to be made to help make that space appropriate for what is going to be done in it. For example, it's hard to have a dance in a room set up full of tables and chairs. And it's hard to have a sit-down dinner in a room where all the tables and chairs have been folded away and stacked up against the wall. The room needs to be prepared. In a similar way, it can be hard to enter into prayer if our space is not ready for prayer. To make a space ready for prayer, there are certain things we can do. A space made ready for prayer should, number 1, include whatever objects, tools, or equipment you need for prayer. Number 2, include whatever helps you to focus your mind and heart on God. Number 3, be a quiet place where you're not likely to be interrupted or distracted. Number 4, be a place where you feel comfortable. Now, each of these 4 things look very different for different people. We're going to take a closer look at each of them, and then we'll view some examples that some of you have sent me and see just how different they are from one another. Everyone's prayer space is different because everyone is different. Okay, number 1, the stuff you need for prayer. The list here will be vastly different depending on what prayer looks like for you. For example, with certain kinds of prayer, you really don't need anything. For the most austere forms of meditation, all you really need is a chair to sit on. But some typical tools for prayer might include a Bible, a prayer book like the BAS or the BCP, a hymnal, a rosary, a devotional book, whatever. And you may also need equipment, a computer or whatever electronic device you use to access online content for prayer. Then there's the stuff that helps you focus on God. And this looks totally different for each person again. And it can, but doesn't have to, include sacred images like icons, a cross or crucifix, prayer cards, statues, sacred objects and sacramentals like candles, incense, holy water, relics, objects that remind you of God or carry memories for you of experiencing God's love. Objects with which you wish to express to God your faith and love, including ways of honoring the prayer space, for example, flowers and textiles. Number 3, a space that is quiet, uninterrupted, and undistracted. The idea here is that you don't want to be interrupted or distracted from prayer, and this is true whether you are praying alone or as a family or a group. So not in a busy, loud, or high traffic area, not with the TV or radio on, and you want to put your phone away unless you are using it to access online content for prayer. Now this part may be as much a function of time as of place, as well as domestic negotiation or planning and scheduling, meaning the time of day can be as much a factor as the place in the house. Some times of day are busier than others, some are quieter than others, just as some places in the house are busier than others or quieter than others. Last of all, you want it to be comfortable. And again, this is different for everyone. For example, the definition of a comfortable chair or a comfortable temperature, it can be vastly different for each person. The main idea is you don't want discomfort to be a distraction. So you don't want to be sitting in a chair that is giving you a backache and distracting you from your prayer, or in a room which is so cold you're too busy shivering to concentrate on your prayer. Levels of lighting are also a consideration. Do you need a good reading light? Or perhaps you like to pray by candlelight. Basically, you need to be able to spend a certain amount of time in that space without discomfort being a distraction. And it isn't always. I say that because, for instance, some people choose to kneel when they pray. Now, nobody kneels because it's the most comfortable position. They do it because it helps them to focus and also gives expression to a certain attitude towards God. So it's just a matter of you want to be comfortable enough that you're not being distracted from prayer by discomfort, because that would be counterproductive. And you want it to be the kind of space that you want to come back to again and again, because that encourages prayer. It facilitates prayer. Now it's time for some examples. We're going to take a look at some very different prayer corners, examples that some of you have sent me or that I've extracted from other willing subjects. Our first example has a very comfortable looking chair, excellent lighting, and a candle to focus and express our intention in prayer, as well as a plant that carries special memories of the loving care of others. Here is another prayer corner, also very well lit, with a candle and very comfortable looking chairs. And this is example of a shared space for shared prayer time. Now here we have a prayer corner, which is clearly a multi-use space for the technologically savvy. It looks well loved, well used, and well equipped for contemplating the excellent prayer resources from a certain parish. Here we have another very comfortable looking chair with a comfortable person enjoying, again, the excellent online prayer resources from a certain parish. And here we can see how simple it can be to create a space for prayer in the home. Here we have another prayer space for two. You can see in the corner there 2 copies of the Book of Common Prayer. One's bigger than the other. And this is actually on top of a dresser in a very small room in a very small house. It's one of the smallest houses I've ever seen. It's only 3 rooms. And this is in that room. It's on a dresser. So we can see, in addition to the Books of Common Prayer, we see an image of Christ in the center, an icon of Christ. We see many images of the saints. I see St. Therese, Our Lady, St. Bernadette, St. Maximus, St. Joseph, St. Francis, St. Andrew, who is the patron saint of this couple's parish. See some candle stubs. We see at least 2 bottles of holy water. We see votive candles, and one of which, having burned down, has been turned into a vase for spring flowers. I can just almost smell those lilacs from here. Of course, not to be missed are the historical medieval art depicting the apocalypse, and also the last year's palm branches behind the icon. A number of rosaries, 2 antique rosaries from 2 different great-grandmothers, as well as some needlework from yet a 3rd great-grandmother. And last but not least, I've been told, are 2 very penitential wooden chairs from IKEA. Here is a very austere-looking prayer corner, which is just the right kind of space for a very austere form of prayer, meditative prayer. It's clearly a spot exposed to the elements, but at least it seems to be sheltered from the north wind, and in spring we might be lucky enough to see some lilac and honeysuckle coming up around there. But in case you're wondering about the view, it's equally austere at the moment. I can almost feel that wind. So, as you can see, creating sacred space in the home, a place for prayer, a place for God, can look vastly different. There are no requirements. The important thing is intentionality, that this place, this time, is set aside for prayer, and we do what we can to honor that. Because wherever we meet God is holy ground. I'll close this presentation with a few more images of prayer and sacred space at home. But I want to thank you for tuning in, and hope you'll join us for future teaching videos on spirituality at home. Oh, and I'll have to close this video with a small disclaimer that if you do decide to make sacred space in your home for prayer, something like this might happen to you.